Welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. I am truly unprepared this week. I was so caught up in the busyness of things that I was like, oh wait a minute, I forgot to actually set up my 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 stream setup. So for now, you have a secret, unknown guest going to be revealed in but a moment. But it's the show. It's Indie Apocalypse Radio. I'm definitely always 100% ready to go. That's the tent mark, the landmark of the show. Where are all these messages? My God, I have too many emails open. But I'm Andrew. I'm the host of that aforementioned Indie Apocalypse. I come on the show. I hang out and I talk to guests. And our first guest, I got into our first guest, who you may know from the internet, not from Indiepocalypse. Like, folks, we do still have them occasionally, non-Indiepocalypse guests. I know it is a rarer occasion, but oops, nope. On such occasion, we occasionally will. I'll sneak let's say indie adjacent guest on there, and you may know this guest from, I would say, most likely. In terms of this co-host with Indie Games of co-host. It is here's the other fun part where I go. Forgot to ask, I guess, how to say their name, and I go, Kyle Labriola.
You nailed it.
Oh my God, yes. With longer names, there is always the worry, like, do you go too spicy or did you not add enough spice? And I added the sufficient.
I think less spice is usually the safer route.
Yes, it is, but often I feel is also incorrect because it feels like the clumsy American English version of it.
Right, correct. But no, you nailed it.
Oh, perfect. Hello, Kyle. Welcome to the show. This is kind of like, I don't know. This is my one for you, one for me style of interviewing, where it's like, oh, someone's interviewed me. Now I can talk to them because I don't feel like it's soft payola to befriend them before they discuss things with me. You know how those sort of things go. Welcome to the show. Important question. The people are always dying to know. Now, you didn't join Indiepocalypse, but you still presumably heard about it at some point, so I got to know. How did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
I definitely heard about it multiple times. I think through like retweets. I think it's like that old advertising sort of mantra that if you just see something in your periphery enough times, you'll have a positive association with it. So I just kept seeing Indiepocalypse over and over again. I think it was like Austin Walker retweets or Michael Lutz.
Well, let's not go crazy. Those guys are touching it.
Someone did. And then was there a Casey Green promo image or something? Or something that looked like Casey Green?
Yeah, no.
Okay, that was the one. That was the one I saw a lot.
Casey Green, well, because Casey Green originally created my looking for submissions page. So that one pops up every week and then or every month, and then sometimes multiple times a month because I'm looking for submissions.
All right, so you have Casey Green to thank for the fact that I'm here.
Oh, perfect. Working as intended in getting you to drawing your attention to presumably to submit, but in this case, just drawing your attention.
Yes, it definitely drew my attention. Like I said, you see it enough times, it's like bounty paper towel. You're like, well, then it must be good, right? I've heard about it a million times.
No, there was that time where Twitch was running those ads about those people with the bounty paper towels, and it drove me insane. Like, I generally don't even have audio on, but just like seeing it and like imagining them talking in streamer voice was driving me insane.
Well, I'll say Indiepocalypse is not there yet. It's not at the advertising saturation.
You're not exhausted with it yet.
No, not yet.
Well, I'll get you somewhere. I'll get you there eventually. I'll get everyone there eventually. No, I'm running into my own saturation problems in a weird way.
With Indiepocalypse or with something else?
No, with no Indiepocalypse. I guess we're more that it's there's a lot of them, and I don't know what to do with them all now.
That's true. I was thinking about that when I was looking at the page, and I'm like, man, there's like 37 of these things, 38.
Yeah. Technically, bonus issues, there's 40 of them.
Well, you could do what Jackbox started doing, which is when they made too many Jackbox party packs, you just start like bundling them together into like here's 1 through 5, here's 6 through
Never,
10.
never. I will never give in to gamer bargain deals.
Well, think of it more as like an omnibus, like a sort of here's One Piece volumes 1 through 60.
But they're always printed out of worse paper, unless you're getting a what's it called? I mean, they all call them different things, but a nice hardcover version.
Hmm.
Well, I'll need to find a nice hardcover version of Indiepocalypse where somehow you're buying 5 of them, but it costs you more money.
Also, now that I'm thinking harder about it, I'm gonna take back my joke because
Yeah.
when I opened the launcher of Indiepocalypse, I was very relieved that there weren't that many things in the launcher.
Yeah. There's only 10 or 11 technically if you count the zine. 12 if you count Electric Zine Maker. Generally speaking.
It was very sort of approachable to actually browse them all.
Yeah, that's much thanks to Ash K and all the different collaborators who made that bundle launcher, which is goes a long way to helping Indiepocalypse look presentable.
It's a lot better than just looking through like a zip.
Oh yeah, and that's what it was for. I don't know, maybe half a year or more. I don't have the tech know-how to build something like that, nor especially back then. I was like, I don't have the budget to pay someone. That's the kind of thing in my mind that sounds like it's very expensive.
Yeah, it sounds impossible.
Right, but actually, it's actually very easy. Actually, I don't know how difficult it was to make, but it's very easy to use.
It was easy. It was easy for you to tell someone else to do it.
Oh no, I didn't tell them. It just came up. One day,
Oh, all right.
one day, they just contacted me and be like, "Hey, I made this thing," and I was like,
That's even easier.
"Yeah, yeah," and I recommend it to people constantly, especially at events, especially when I see like students, because they're like, "Hey," because there's no good way to make a portfolio if you're like a game development student, except there is now because you can send people that launcher, and you can,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
you get a background image. You can dress it up all cool. Like it has like sidebar text now that it didn't originally have.
Hmm.
So you can put like, oh, here's my thoughts on this game I made as a student, or I just put in what the game is, and it's all very cool. It's a very cool, interesting thing, and I like.
It's a sign that the PlayStation 1 demo discs are coming back.
Yeah, I've thought about a lot about demo disc conceptions, and like there's a specific memory of I think it was like Soul Reaver and then some weird PS1 to RTS thing where we're both on like on the disc for Gex 3, and
that that's amazing.
I like that idea of like you buy I guess if there are more like micro publishers, it would make sense for them to do this sort of thing. But the idea of like I bought an indie game and then I got 2 other like demos for games on like with that game.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, in a world, but you think that would work digitally? You
Oh
think
yeah,
people would like you just buy it digitally and it comes with demos for other games?
yeah. Well, you have to build the tricky part is that you build it into the launcher.
Sure. Yeah.
There's like menu options, so it's like you buy some Devolver game. You buy Hotline Miami too.
I was gonna say Devolver might be listening. If you see Devolver roll this out next year, you know where they got it.
Yeah, and then you buy whatever flagship game, and then they have 2 smaller games on there. I'm trying to name Devolver games, but it shows how long it's been since I've played nostalgia games because I'm like, Super Puzzle Tower. No, Disc Room. That's newer, right?
Yeah, Disc Room.
Yeah, so you buy Hotline Miami too, and then on the bottom, there's like Disc Room and Minutes or whatever demos for them. Yeah, but that is
I guess Cult of the Lamb would have been the most
right.
hip pick we could have said.
I don't play that many video games that are. I play one modern one occasionally, and then I'll spend the other half playing like Breath of Fire, whatever sort of thing, or just watching movies.
Sure.
There's Nothing nothing gets you a better artistic perspective than other art forms.
Yeah, I've been so torn on there's a lot of games that are sort of like it's relaxing just to unwind and watch the numbers go up, but then I
Yeah.
keep telling myself like, should I be playing these, or like should I just force myself to do something completely different rather than watch the numbers go up?
Right, right. Should you be playing? Should you be watching Stalker instead? And the answer is yeah, you should. It's only I almost did this morning, but I might do it after this. It's been in my pile, but it's on like the newer pile of uh, things that are actually on top of my Blu-ray player.
Right.
And that's been like a whole other thing of like buying physical things and then like sitting down and I've left the binge lifestyle behind. I no longer
Right.
binge. I merely watch it one episode of a TV show every day, and it
That's the way the Lord intended.
yes. And then I think about it. I come back to it, and I don't. I also think and I think this happens with games especially. Is like with TV shows, I was realizing it kind of like flattens shows. So like if they're like it flattens them to like their average. So if the show is like mostly fine, but like if you binge through all of it, if it gets boring, there was just a different 24 minutes that you missed, and then you're fine because there's another 24 minutes to come.
Right, exactly. It's almost like it's like a completely different texture of sort of that whole medium is the idea of binge watching it or watching
Right.
it one at a time. And it's like I think we're clearly seeing in like a post Netflix world which shows make okay sense to binge and which ones only make sense if you watch it one episode at a time.
Right, right. And then it shows I wonder like would I watch who knows how many sick like of those like would I have sat around and had if I hadn't had like, what's the I'm trying to think it's not Reno, no, Brooklyn. I was like Reno it's not Reno 911, it's Brooklyn 9 what's the whatever the name of that show is.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yes, there it is. Would I have watched any of that if I was like am now and like deliberately sitting down, not having it on my second screen, having it on TV in front of me one episode at a time? would I make it anywhere in that show, or would?
Yeah, it's funny because usually I think that watching it one at a time like improves the experience, but I also think it would help you sort of curate out shows that you're not truly enjoying because then
Right,
you just wouldn't come back.
right, right. If I had to give like it like your like binging helps you not give it your full attention, especially with like if it's like the second screen show.
Right.
And it's like a whole other. But speaking of binging, no. Speaking of consume, no. Speaking of how we approach art, tell me about how you approach games with regards to what is Indie Games of Co-host?
Indie Games with Co-host is a co-host page, which I guess I have to explain what co-host is, right? Co-host is a independently owned social media platform, I suppose you could say.
Yeah,
That functions pretty similar to like a Tumblr, although it kind of reminds me more of like a live journal. Like, I feel like it's kind of in the live journal Tumblr space.
yeah,
Um, and it was like closed invitation at first, but now I think it's fully open. And I made this account, Indie Games of Co-host, because I felt like, first of all, I never know when people make these new platforms if they're gonna last a week or if we're all just gonna forget. But
yeah,
so far I've stuck with it. And
yeah. How is your Hive account doing?
yeah, exactly. My Hive account is not doing great. I don't think I have a single message on it. But when I got to co-host, I was like, oh, I really like what their sort of philosophy is. There's a lot of like hide the numbers, hide the metrics. There's a lot of like you can't see who people are following, you can't see who they like, the posts they like. A lot of like privacy stuff that I think is like common sense.
Yeah,
And then I kind of had this sad thought that like even if this were to try to take off, like there's already a sort of community, quote unquote, for games on Twitter and a community on YouTube, sort of a community on Tumblr. Like there's communities that sort of pre-exist, and then when a new platform comes out, it's impossible to kind of get that started because you would have to like search through the tags every day and follow people based on searching through the tags every day.
yeah.
So I was like, I figured why don't I make this easier for everybody else, and I'll look through the tags, and then I'll try to connect everybody. I'll talk about new games that come out. I will sort of, they call it share. I'm gonna call it reblog. I'll reblog,
Right.
developers' posts so that it's
Yeah.
all kind of coming to like a central page that isn't, and I try to only post once or twice a day, so I'm not like spamming everyone's co-host
Yes, yes.
timeline.
The feature I truly want is I never want to see repeated reblogs
Yes, yeah.
because like they hide metrics, but you see the metrics, when you see the same post 6 times
Yeah,
in a
you see
row.
it sort of viscerally.
Yeah, and you're just
But
like,
yeah, I figured I could be the person that can kind of like pluck all the threads and try to weave them together so that if people wanted to, they could follow Indie Games of co-host and then at least know that there's one person who's doing the looking for them, talking to people for them, and kind of like collating it all into one place.
right, right. Because who's to know if the indie developers you're looking for use indie game, not indie games?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
You have to follow every iteration of video game until you find it, until you find the right.
I Stuff like that makes me hate tagging systems,
Yeah.
like platforms that are totally based on tags. I'm like, can we just make a section of the website that's like I'm interested in games, and then you go to that, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it wouldn't make sense for co-hosts, but like, I when I was young, I was on like DeviantArt, and DeviantArt was not tag based. It was more like public folders, sort of like sections of the website that you
Yeah.
browse. And I feel like something about that made sense to me. Like, if you want to talk about this, you just go to that part. You know what I mean?
Right, right. It's too reliant on like, well, because it's hard to feed those into algorithms because you're not just like feeding a machine a text string.
Right. And DeviantArt was sort of pre the sort of timeline structure of social media.
Yeah, which is a whole other cursed existence. I when they added that For You tab to Twitter, and I realized this is why people hate Twitter so much. Because if I looked at the site like this, I would go insane. I would
Yeah,
I would never
it's really
survive.
disturbing. It's really disturbing when you realize that like you're not even looking at the same website that everybody else is looking at.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you're not viewing things chronologically, I think that it's you're you need help. You need somebody to help you.
Right.
It's not an ideal way to do it.
And then the second reason I made Indie Games of co-host was simply because I realized that it feels like co-host attracts a lot of game developers,
Yeah.
and it seems to attract a lot of like programmer type people. So I'm like, there clearly are people already here showing their work. Like, why not give them an excuse to talk about it? So I kind of created this series of indie interviews where I talk to developers, and the only criteria for it is just that you use co-hosts.
Right.
Like, literally, if Team Cherry wanted to talk to me about Hollow Knight, I'd be like, show me your co-host first, otherwise I don't want to talk about it.
Right. Right.
It's meant to be sort of like a reward and sort of like, again, like sort of like a gathering everyone together of like, okay, you're on co-host, let's talk about it. You're on co-host, let's talk about it. And then
Nice.
if people want to follow you, they just click this link.
Yeah. So it's not just like another. It creates like more of a what sort of like a way to navigate it rather than just being like a website that is kind of like sitting on its own, and then you go to there, and then you just it keeps within like it helps create like a game ecosystem.
Right. And
Rather
then once I started doing it, I think my new motivation after I started doing a few of the interviews was just that it's the right thing to do. I mean, I would talk to people, and I feel like indies never get a chance to be interviewed,
right.
unless your game sells a million copies. Nobody's ever going to interview and ask you, why'd you make this? What's your story? How did you get here? What were you trying to communicate with this? And you can clearly tell as soon as you ask people the questions that they have a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
Almost everyone I've interviewed has said, "Oh, am I going over the character limit?" And I'm like, "There's no character limit.
Right. Right.
Like, you can talk as much as you want about your project. Like, that's that's the whole point I'm doing this, is so that finally you have a microphone to talk about your project."
Yeah, because there's when you don't have to like be beholden to a website and an editor. It's the secret thing of self-publishing. It's like, oh, no one's stopping me. I can just do whatever I want.
Right. Or part of me is like, I think of it like it's Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh, is this gonna work as like a Twitter thread? It's like I'm not pasting it into a Twitter thread. Like,
right.
this is entirely going to be a co-host post, we can go all day. We could stretch it as long as co-host is going to let us stretch vertically.
Right, right. It's just a matter of like whether someone's gonna read it all. But I mean, that's the same for a tweet. Who's sometimes someone sees you see a little thread icon, they're like, no, thank you, I'm done. Check out. No need for me.
Yeah, I can't promise that anyone's going to read these interviews, but like I'll put it out there and
Yeah,
put the read more divider and let people click it if they want to click it.
yeah. That is like it's important to like not have to be like to say it in in a way that isn't intended to be a slam. It's good that people pay attention to you even if you're not successful. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah,
like
definitely.
because like or like not rather more not like commercially successful because like there's a very good chance, close to 100, that your art is still successful as a piece of art that you made, whether
Right.
people
The,
pay
the
attention
question
to
the
it or
question
not.
is, right, have people seen it yet? That's the only question.
And sometimes, and you need a lot of ways to. I mean, very biased in this opinion, of course, but I think you need a lot of ways to get people to see those things.
Right. And you kind of need multiple people doing it, which is why I told you that these stray tweets, these
Yeah,
stray KC Green tweets of Indiepocalypse were kind of part of the inspiration for making the co-host page because I'm like, nobody's gonna do, I don't know what you call it. I guess you can call it curation
right.
or spotlighting. Like nobody's gonna do it unless someone just sits down and does it. There's no money to be made in spotlighting, helping
Right.
people. There's not money to be made in helping people. You really just it's who has the time to do it and who feels like volunteering to do it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna volunteer to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I have a long history of saying there's no money to be made in selling it when you're doing that too, either.
Right.
But it's like important work other like all around because there is games have a generalized, I think, curation problem.
Yes.
It's too. I feel like there was a time maybe where people covered games, but now it feels like games lead coverage way more than critics lead game coverage. Like like marketing leads coverage more than critics do in a lot of ways. Or like
Yeah, a lot of games coverage is, unfortunately, I think an arm of games advertising essentially.
yeah,
It's just like the second phase of game advertising is games coverage, and the publishers know that it'll get covered, so they know they can rely on that as being sort of the second phase of getting the word out.
right. That's why like I mean, find me a gaming website in 2023 that doesn't also have a Twitch streaming arm.
Right.
Like if not just like a whole retinue of shows that is um, based around whatever games very likely whatever games they think will people watch on Twitch.
Right.
It
I mean,
was
something I've been thinking about a lot is a term I've learned from you because I've heard you say it. The idea of a game being gifable.
yeah I think I saw that and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna say I hopefully I mentioned it. Oh, you know what? I don't think I ever typed it up, but I've definitely said it on this show a lot. That came from a Melisantani tweet about uh, talking about how if I think he said something to the effect of if the Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, came out now, it would get a 7 out of 10, and a lot of like marketers on social media would say it wasn't very gifable.
I mean, it's true. I think now that you put like a word to it, I mean, I think about that way more than anything else. I think that might even be the more central problem of getting the words out about games, even more than whatever any specific news site is doing. I
Yeah,
think the idea that people find games through video footage, streams, YouTube videos, and if your game doesn't make sense for a GIF or a YouTube video or a Twitch stream, then you're out of luck, I
yes,
guess. I mean,
and I would say that applies to a very high amount of Indiepocalypse games.
and then I try to think of what are the alternatives in 2023 of getting people who would like your game to find it and give it a chance if it's not good at sort of video footage. And then it's like, I think like we got to go back to magazines, but I don't think, magazines are not sort of coming back in a mainstream way.
Right.
Blog posts, long form written reviews, I guess, but like from what I've heard, every game in the past like 5 years that people have like lauded the narrative of and has been sort of like a critic's darling, it has not like translated to sales.
Right. Like, do you know which? Like, do you have any fresh in mind? Because I also don't know what is successful or not sales wise.
The one that was coming to mind, not to be rude, but was Where the Water Tastes Like Wine.
Oh yes.
Which I haven't played, but I feel like I somehow heard through the grapevine, or maybe I was just looking at the number of Steam reviews.
That one had the other double secret way to get your game coverage is have game writers write in your game.
Of course, but you would think that would be an advantage, and it didn't. Right. It didn't move the needle.
Right. It is one of those things where it's like it's a good reminder that coverage doesn't necessarily result in sales because obviously that had plenty of coverage.
And I've heard that from other indies too, like sort of like, oh, so and so big website made an article about my thing, and like it didn't move the needle at all.
Right.
Like, but so and so YouTuber played it, and that was the only thing that mattered. So I'm like, what hope does not to sound too despondent, but like what hope does anyone have if the only way that these things are being shared is through video?
Right. I mean, it's even like this kind of what's sort of like non-committal coverage too. I think is like because it's weird how you said that, or like very particularly said that this idea of like, oh, I got a lot of this kind of focus, but it like this coverage, but it, like I got posted on a big site, but it didn't result in anything. And I've thought about times where like it gets something that gets retweeted by a 50K account counts for a lot less than something that gets like quote tweeted but with an endorsement from someone with 1K,
Right.
Like it's like you kind of have to have your own in a lot of like your own like entire article, or even like you're still subject to gifability, if you're.
It's also like when your game gets covered, it almost has to be like sadly has to be like the most hyperbolic endorsement ever. Like, I'm very excited to try this game. Like, what is it called? Pizza Tower.
Oh yeah, almost yeah, yes.
I mean, it looks amazing, but like it feels like when it gets covered, the person writing the article has to be like, it's the greatest game of the year, like game of the year contender. It's like, and that's the only way people will like give it the time of day is if it's a game of the year contender. Like, why can't it just be good?
Oh, I have a personal bone to pick because someone said it was bad art, well done, or something like that. They implied the art was bad, but was very well animated. It was like such disrespect. The art in that game is it's truly amazing.
Someone's not quite getting it. I think. If that's what they think.
Or maybe that style is just out of vogue. Or you know what? That is a throwback to best graphics. What's the word I'm looking for? Artistic.
Mm-hmm.
This it doesn't have a technical prowess. You can't see the pizza man has a lot of sweat, but it's not realistic sweat like you would see in The Last of Us Part 2.
Right, and then, you see all the pixels, so it looks like it was drawn in MS Paint and stuff like that.
That's the beauty of it.
And people think, if people look at that and think it's not intentional.
Right. It's as if they didn't have enough time when that game made like 7 years to make or something.
They didn't have enough pixels to make it look good.
But that's partly why I think games are in such a very weird spot, and things like indie games with co-host help to be like, hey, by just like sitting down and talking to them, talking to any game developer as if they were the developers of like, whatever AAA game you heard about, whatever game of the year game you heard about, just by talking to them like they are just any other developer, I think it helps to, normalize these different approaches to game development and be like, oh no, it's just all the game development in the end.
Right. Yeah, or even just treating them like they're the creators of Celeste or the creators of Hollow Knight or the creators of Stardew Valley. Like, obviously we all kind of know deep down that when something reaches a certain level of like commercial success, people take it more seriously. But like, we don't have to. We could choose to not do that. We could just take everybody equally seriously and let them sort of express why they made this game.
Yeah, right. It's not like uh, there. I mean, it takes like 2 seconds to spend some time on like Wikipedia and look at most popular movies from XYZ, or like even best picture winners, and go, huh, weird how people don't talk about any of these anymore.
Right.
And like how like what longevity looks like. And
I mean,
there's
with all my worry about this, another sort of like inspiration for indie games of co-host, in addition to Indiepocalypse, and I know this is opening a whole can of worms, and I know people have different opinions about this, but I was thinking of other social media platforms, and I know that there's things like Can You Pet the Dog on Twitter, and
yeah,
like wholesome games on Twitter, and like say what you want about those, but like at least they are like spotlighting things based on a certain criteria or a theme, and I'm like, I could do that too. And the criteria will just be, is the developer on co-host or not? Like,
right. And it's something that is less that you build your games towards to include dog petting or I have generally no opinion on petting the dog. I think it's kind of it's like any other dog whatever popular website that's based on, or popular Twitter account that's based on just banality. It's just like there's an emptiness to them all in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Hey, rate our. It's like rate your dogs. It's the same. It occupies the same brain space to me as
right,
of just like, oh, this is like a marketing tool.
right. But I also thought it was fascinating in almost like I guess, a neutral way that like from the consumer or the audience
Yeah,
perspective, if there's as much interest about knowing that a game lets you pet the dog as there is about reading an article on Polygon.com, then maybe like we need to rethink how to get the word out about games online, because clearly the ways that it used to be done maybe are not as interesting to people, and people do want to know like, can I pet the dog, or like, can I make a character that looks like myself in real life, and is there a character creator that's inclusive, or like, is this game, I won't say wholesome, but like, is this game non-violent, or is this game relaxing? Like, it feels like people are finding their own criteria now for where they want to find games, and maybe the old way of doing it is not meeting those needs, I guess. I mean, we have to
right,
sort of rethink how social media works. I think a lot of people kind of want to curate their selection by vibe, not even by like game genre, but just like by the vibe it will give them when they play it, or like what other games vibe it will remind them of. So it's just like a very weird space now.
right, and it's yeah. There are a lot of other things that go with it,
Yes.
but generally it is like showing off like more games than you would typically see, until the point where it reaches a point where it defines itself, and then you have uh I I remember there was something about someone was talking about like ooblets and how it was like they took violence out of their game, and it was hard to remove violence, and it was trying to remember it exactly, but something like, oh, we have dance battles that function like Pokemon battles. So I was like, wait, so is the difference between violence and uh, Pokemon animal fighting blood sport and cute wholesome fighting is a couple combat names and some animations, like
Right. I think I know the exact Twitter thread that you might be
yeah,
talking about.
like that's if I take a sidebar, that is my general issue with wholesome, is that it just puts pastels over very traditional game design and doesn't actually engage with the idea of what it means.
Yeah, I would consider things like that purely
Yeah,
an aesthetic and emotional category, and not like related to game design at its core, with
right,
some exceptions.
Right, right. They're definitely obviously. Listen, I paint with a broad brush, but even the broadest brush misses part of the wall. You know.
Right. But I also, on one hand, like defend the audience. Like, I've watched like the wholesome directs and things like that. Like, if the audience or the player who's getting into games or wants to find certain times in games, if that's how they want to narrow down their search, then like I think that's their right. But I think you would know most of all, like a lot of the people who are submitting things for Indiepocalypse, like would never stand a chance being included in something like that
Right.
because they're not aiming for that
Right.
vibe.
Even if I think their games contain high degrees of wholesomeness because it's not presented through the right lens, perhaps.
Sure.
But like, it's a whole other. That's a whole other thing. I don't care too much about arguing about. I think games need more genre. I think when I saw people arguing about JRPGs, I was like, you see, this is an issue with uh, genre in video games because I don't think Final Fantasy has not been in JRPG since maybe Final Fantasy X
Sure.
in
Yeah.
terms of how I think of like genre, and we need like a density of genre that describes things more than just like raw game mechanics because Call of Duty and Doom are not both first person shooters,
Right.
or they are technically, but in the same way that are like it's a mess. It's generally a mess.
I mean, I think everyone who either plays games or works in games knows that like the terminology we have is so insufficient for describing your own work or for helping people find the work that they want to find. I mean, it's a complete mess. We make up genre names that are just the names of games mashed
Yes.
together. I mean, like, and it's like the only effective way to try to lead people towards a game they might want to try is like, oh, it's it's a Stardew like. It's
Yeah.
like,
Which is
it's a
and Stardew
it's
like
a
itself
Vampire
is
Survivors like.
and Stardew like itself is just blatantly a Harvest Moon like.
Right, right,
Which itself is probably what like is that even the first? What did Harvest Moon rip off?
right, exactly. But I feel bad as for developers and for the audience
Yeah.
because I just think the tools for finding things you might like are so insufficient. And to bring it back to Indiepocalypse, I think the hard part is knowing that there's probably thousands and thousands of people out there that would like any given volume of Indiepocalypse, but like how would they know that the type of games they like are in there? Like
Right.
the people who want to find games that are like Stardew haven't made right now because there's like a billion social media accounts dedicated to curating those for you and saying like, hey, like here's a YouTube channel dedicated entirely for fans of Stardew Valley to find games that are similar. But like, I recently played a game in Indiepocalypse. I think it was 35 called Crumbs.
Yeah.
And like, I loved it, but like how would anyone, the question we all have to ask is like if we wanted to find more people who like games like that, how would you get them in the door to even know where to look? Because games like that don't even have terminology necessarily to describe what they are.
They're what is it like a adventure game? Like because you walk around and interact with objects. Is it a walking simulator?
Right.
Yeah. Crumbs by IGF Nouveau nominated Quinn K with their Swings to Skull, which is like that whole other like horror is a whole other thing too. Like what you do is you make a horror game and then you ask people to play your other games.
Right, right. Well, if you want to get on itch.io on the front page,
Right.
Especially during Halloween, you make a spooky, low poly, creepy.
Yeah.
That's the way. That's the way to do it.
Whenever I see someone, I follow a post like, "Wow, oh my god, I made it to the front page. I'm like the top trending, etc. for itch game. Like I'm the number one browser web downloadable, etc." It's like, well, it's also a horror game. try hard mode. Try not doing easy mode next time.
Right, and it's funny because like
Yeah.
I don't think that's like I think it's
No.
two guys who run itch. I like it's not intentional. Like
No, I think
the
that's just
itch.io.
it's how their algorithm works.
Yeah, because like when I go to the itch.io like Twitter page, which I think does a pretty good job of like highlighting different games, like they're not horror. So I'm like, clearly this is just like a natural thing that I think especially a lot of younger people gravitated
Yeah.
towards and are looking for. So, and obviously YouTubers.
Right, right. Because there was someone, Caden Ramstack, I believe, a tabletop developer, had spent a lot of time like looking at the Twitch or Itch's thing and how it worked, and the conclusion was, yeah, if you post a lot of videos, your thing skyrockets. If you get a lot of videos in the comments, your thing skyrockets up the charts. Like it's just how it works. Probably because like if I imagine if you're building on the back end, it like this it's that's probably like a good engagement for itch to have is video content, so they want to encourage
And
more of
and
it.
I think another advantage that horror games probably have versus other games is like we already have all the terminology to describe horror as
Right.
a genre and as subgenres. Film and novel of literature already defined all these words for us.
Yeah.
So the tags work probably
Yeah,
like
and it's a whole other like subculture of just like horror YouTube and streaming and everything that just like when I'm curating even the worst of the worst horror games that I've ever played have like 13 videos of playthroughs.
I mean, it's just like the people looking for Stardew. I think people looking
Yeah.
for horror, they know how to find it, and it's like very easily available.
Yeah, it's just it's a like they're just like but I think it's not even like a trend because horror's always been like that. Horror's always been like a low budget, high grossing genre. Yeah,
Right.
people like spookiness. They like being scared. They like uh, it's the kind of thing where it's like, oh, we had a budget of $6,000. We made 7.5 million
Right.
because we people love to be scared. Kyle, do you like to be
Well,
scared? Do you like horror? What's your
I
opinion on
don't.
horror?
I don't, which is what I always feel like I'm missing out on like this whole genre of film and games because I don't like getting scared. And now I'm like, should I just force myself to play like a Resident Evil
I
8 or something? Because I feel like I'm missing everyone every year. There's all these articles of like, oh my God, this was the most amazing. And I'm like, I guess I just have to stomach it and try it.
I guess it depends like how you approach horror because I am not scared by horror films. I know monsters aren't real. But also like I also most people do, but there's still like somehow this idea of, pinhead creeps into your subconscious and you don't know how it does it, but even though there are no limit configurations in real life and you will not get sucked into the world of pain and pleasure, but still
Right.
it gets into people's head, but it just doesn't get
Prob
into my head, so I get like, ooh, nice aesthetics.
Probably my best experience with a horror game was I think when I was a freshman in college in the dorms, me and my friends played Amnesia: The Dark
Yeah.
Descent, and like did it as a group thing. And I think I enjoyed the sort of group social aspect of us all sort of getting scared and like switching off with the controller and stuff like that. So I think like that sort of, which ironically is the experience of like going to a movie theater
Yes.
and experiencing it sort of communally. But I'm like, I think I need it as a video game. It's gonna need to be like a multiplayer experience.
Yeah, horror is I mean, that's why I think all those videos exist in the first place, because horror is like this very communal genre that we have. We like being scared but not alone.
Right.
And
That's
like,
why that game Phasmophobia did so good.
yeah,
A year or two ago. It was like they cracked the code on like online multiplayer horror game that is good for streaming.
right. It checks all your. Oh, don't forget it's early access, so it's half finished.
Yep. Yep.
Checks all your
It's
boxes.
it's a little janky. You can't tell if the jank is on purpose or if it's just early access.
Yeah, but all Jank's also funny, it
Yeah,
helps them in their favor.
jank is great.
I saw someone playing it with like one of the people was in VR, and there's a whole different experience of just like how they can navigate the world because they have all those they can move and touch things and hide. It's very interesting. It seems cool. It's not. That's one of those kinds of things that I have no interest in playing.
Yeah, I don't know. I might try it. I'm very fascinated that also like when you play with multiple people, one person
Yeah,
could just stay in the van.
right,
Someone can
right.
stay in the van parked outside, which I think is like a genius thing to include that like there's almost like an asymmetrical amount of horror that you might experience depending on if you're like, oh, I'm gonna stay in the van.
Yeah, but you experience more horror because you see the camera and then you see the ghost creeping up behind them.
I
And
know that's the genius
yeah,
of it. It's sort of like it's not even less horror. It's just different.
right. It is creating like the tension that you could only create in film of multiple perspectives,
Right.
but within a game.
It's pretty smart.
Yeah, yeah. There's like a lot of. It's such a untapped, but also it's such a baby medium.
Now,
So very
now
young.
when you say baby medium, do you mean it's a medium for children or?
I yes, and also young. No, it's not
Okay,
fully a
okay.
medium. It's not fully a medium for children. Uh, do a lot of the top prestige games also feel like they are that kind of thing that also feels like they're very, in a lot of ways, appropriate for children? They don't necessarily tackle complicated ideas. Maybe, probably, but I think that's also true of plenty of like run-of-the-mill prestige style television. Is all sound and fury,
I mean, that's not. I feel like I came on your podcast just to tell you how difficult your job is with Indiepocalypse, and I'll just keep giving you bad news over and over again. But another thing I was thinking about when I was playing the Indiepocalypse games I was playing was like, this is generally geared for more of an adult audience, and
Yeah,
not even because of any of the not because of the content that's in it, but because of sort of the timbre of the emotions.
right.
And most genres of games that spread a lot, I feel like spread a lot because they can appeal to an adolescent,
Yeah, yeah.
audience.
I watched The Matrix when I was a young teen, but there are like plenty of R-rated movies that I would not get as a teen. Like they
Right,
don't have that
right.
appeal, even though technically they both exist within the same. I've actually had that experience at events where, like I've had like an issue open, and technically there's no like objectionable content, but I had to explain that like they're like, oh, is this good for kids? I'd be like, kind of. Like there's no excessive sex or violence, but like I don't know if a kid's ready to grapple with some of the ideas that are being presented.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like we need a campaign to tell adults like, hey, there are games out there that like if you like literature, you like film, like there are games that capture that spectrum of emotions. Like Mario's great, but there's more than Mario and Call of Duty out there.
Right.
If you're interested.
I've I've had this exact conversation with people at like a punk flea market I attended, where they were telling me about how they worked at like a local like art house theater, but then like games, I don't really play games, and like games aren't really for me. I'm like, these games, how there are those movies that you were talking about, that we were just talking about. Games can also be like that, and they're like, oh, I guess you're right. I just hadn't thought about that. Like there's this notion that people just do not think that games can have those like I don't know, complicated ideas, I guess. Or
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking to you on co-host and I asked you to describe, what Indiepocalypse is, you referred to them as alternative, and you
yeah,
said that alternative was a sort of a vague descriptor that can mean what you want it to mean. But the more I think about it, the more I think that like the people who would be into alternative games, maybe the people who are into not even people who are into games, it would be the people who are into alternative comics,
yeah,
alternative film, alternative animation, alternative music, like it's somehow I think when you're on the sort of fringes of the mainstream, your work of art is actually more similar to something from a different medium than it is from your own medium at that
yeah,
point. Like it's more similar to a poem. I always have thought of these games as like poem games. That was kind of like the word that my brain had always come with. Like,
right.
oh, this game is less like a young adult novel and more like a poem. And like someone playing this would have to understand that this is more like reading a book of poetry than it is like going to see a Marvel movie or whatever.
Yeah, I've had this notion for a while that it's easier for me to convince art people to become gamers than to convince gamers to become art people.
Exactly. I think that's 100% accurate.
But it's still a hard fight either way. To be like, no, 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 no. Trust me, I know you don't think you play games and you think all games are Mario Kart. Um, but games can they possess like a wide spectrum of ideas, just like
And then unfortunately, whoever you're talking to or whatever game you're pitching them on, then you have to deal with the controller and like
yeah.
how the controls work. And God forbid if it's a first-person game, then if they've never held a controller before, there's like a whole other obstacle.
Right, right. Where any movie, there is that like that's the fascinating thing about games, because even if a movie is complicated, you can watch it.
Yep.
Even if you understand 0% of it, you can just turn it on and watch it.
Yep. There's no physical barriers to a movie unless you can't hear it or can't see it or you don't understand the language that's being spoken. I mean, like those are the only sort of like direct barriers.
Right.
Everything else is purely artistic.
And two-thirds of those, we've already worked around those with subtitles.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if there are ways to like if there are like audio films, if that makes sense.
There are, yeah,
Okay.
there are. There's descriptive audio tracks that you could
Okay.
put on, and then the descriptive audio narrator describes what is being shown in between the dialogue.
Right. Probably less common, but
So film has covered all of these concerns.
right, right. It's harder to teach someone how to use a controller.
Yep.
But there's got to be a way. There's got to be at least like that's why Indiepocalypse all on the PC. You keep people use mouse and keyboard. You just got to teach them how to use it in a new way.
Yeah. A
And,
lot of it's arrow keys.
right. Yeah, arrow keys or those other things that we call arrow keys, WASD.
Right. The non-gamers won't know about that one, but we could teach them.
Well, if you buy the right, I have a gamer keyboard, I think, because WASD are red where the rest of the keys are black.
That's so funny. I've never seen that. That's hilarious.
It came free with the PC I bought.
They're like, you'll be needing this.
Yeah, you bought a gamer PC, so here's a gamer keyboard and mouse. And I did. I'll admit the gamer mouse won me over. Now I can't live without those little like side buttons.
Oh no.
It's primarily for like the back buttons, like going forward and back is what I use that a lot.
Right.
I don't. It
The
has
game, the gamers got something right.
yeah, gamers they're not all bad. I think probably. But speaking of gamers, do you play video games? What's going on? Do you like video
I
games?
do.
Huh.
I enjoy video game from time to time.
What is no? Let's okay. Instead of talking about we could just talk about what kind of video games. What are your if you can answer this question, because I have difficulty with this question when it's asked of me. I think you may have even asked it of me. I don't remember. Of the games you covered, do you have like let's not call them favorites. I'm asking you to tell me like what games would you want to tell people of the games you covered on Indie Games of Coast, or just the creators, because sometimes you cover them more like people have a larger library of work.
Let me see. Could I mention a tabletop game real quick?
Yes, tabletop games are also within Indiepocalypse.
That was a silly question because it seems like most volumes of Indiepocalypse have a tabletop game in them. But yeah, when I first started the account, I made this like pinned post that's like, "Oh, tell me about yourself as a developer." And I got so many comments that were like, "Hey, I'm a tabletop developer, but you probably don't count us, right?" And I'm like, "I never said that." Like, the tabletop developers think that there's no space for them.
Yeah, but it's such tabletop development. I argue in some ways I'm more excited by their approach to design, because it is like partially I think because it's paper and pen is what you use to make it primarily. There's more of an incentive to be like, I want to take this idea and turn it into a game, rather than I want to take this other game and turn it into my game.
Right. So I guess one person I would give a shout out to was the first tabletop developer that I interviewed was Binary, at Binary on co-host, and they make a game called Apocalypse Frame. And it's just a very cool mech game. I haven't had a chance to play it myself, but it looks very cool.
Yeah, so the trickier part about tabletop games, you need often need other people.
I'm just collecting like a folder of PDFs of like someday I will play this with other people. But what stood out to me is that Apocalypse Frame is using something called the Lumen system, which is a tabletop system designed as sort of like a halfway point between like the feeling of playing a video game but adapting it to tabletop.
Yeah.
And the creator of the Lumen system said that he was very inspired by like wanting to create tabletop games that feel like they're like a looter shooter or like a hero shooter, or a Diablo, something where you feel like you feel very powerful, the combat's very fast, you have a power fantasy of sort of destroying things, getting loot, destroying things, getting loot, and sort of like trying to streamline combat so that it's more of like a separate phase from the role playing, and then you have sort of sandwiched in between the combat, you can sort of role play separately.
Yeah.
Which I know most tabletop games are not aiming for that, and that's totally fine, but I think as a sort of intro to tabletop for people who usually play video games, I was very intrigued by this Lumen system of trying to directly adapt what it's like to play a video game, try to like trim all the other cruft and be like, okay, you know what it's like to play Diablo, or you know what it's like to play, like an Overwatch. Like, just get in there, do it. If you're shy about role playing, you don't have to worry about being nervous. You can kind of like just go with the flow, and then there will be sort of like a mission, a mission pitching or a sort of camping phase afterwards, where you could sort of play as a character.
Yeah, because that is. We had played one last night that was 90% like very loose rolling in, but it was primarily like role playing. They're like, it's like, how much do you want to crank up the improv knob on your role playing game session? And there's a lot of games that like accommodate that, and it's a little maybe it's a little trickier maybe to figure out which one is which. I don't know. I don't know how easy it is to be like. I guess you would look at it, and if you see a lot of rules, you're like, oh, there's a lot of rules here. That way, I don't have to be a person necessarily.
I think a lot of people who play tabletop, and probably everyone who develops tabletop, knows that the cruel irony is that everyone who tries tabletop for the first time is trying it because of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
But I've played a little Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like the worst game to be your intro. Because it's somehow it's too in the middle. It's not the gameplay, the combat's not streamlined enough, but it's like too much role playing, but then too much combat. And like most indie tabletop games that I find on itch make it very clear with like very streamlined rules of like, hey, the dice rolls are going to be this quick, and if you like combat, play this game. If you like role playing, play this game. And like if there's anything I could do on my co-host page, it would be to try to like spotlight these indie projects that are so much more easily communicated to beginners than Dungeons and Dragons is.
Right, because it's like it's the wargaming blood runs deep in that game.
Right.
And
somehow they've made 5 versions of it, and they have still not fully divorced themselves from this sort of like mountain of systems.
Right, they just they take them down, or they move them around, they shuffle them around, but they're still pretty much always there.
Because I've always found tabletop to be intimidating, but every indie developed tabletop I've seen has been like a clean 5-page PDF with crystal clear rules and extremely streamlined dice rolling.
Yeah, whenever I make them, I just use 6-sided dice. That's it, because I trust people have them lying around somewhere.
And if they don't, they can go to the store and buy a copy of Yahtzee real quick.
Yeah. You can just buy. The easiest kind of die to have. Easiest kind of die to find. So I like the simplicity of it, even though like I guess mathematically speaking, multiple sizes offer you multiple opportunities, but who knows? You just make math. There's no rules. That's the secret of game design. There's no rules. You can just kind of do whatever you want,
It's true. And it actually leads me. I had one more. If I have time to shout out a video game from the page.
Yeah, we've got. It's my show. I have infinite time. I'm not using studio time that someone's gonna kick me out of.
We don't have to throw to a Twitch ad break soon.
No, I checked fairly recently, and next week is my 100th episode, and let me look at my earnings tab real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Throughout a
Let the
hundred
people know.
throughout 100 episodes, I have. Is there a way to? Oh, I need to go to payouts. I'm not eligible for a payout yet. I have $39.54. So
you're not playing the Twitch game right.
I know, like I'm not being like, hey guys, here on Twitch.tv. I'm not. I don't have a bunch of emotes. I'm not shouting out all of my followers. I don't have my face on the screen.
You haven't gamified the chat section yet by
Yeah.
having currencies in the chat that
Nope.
they could redeem.
Nope. There's no crowd control. You can't take control of my body and make me ask certain questions. You can barely talk to me. You can barely interact with me. But it is.
I could probably talk a whole other hour about YouTube and Twitch and how fascinating that all is.
Yeah.
But the game I wanted to shout out.
Yes.
If anyone were to go to Indie Games to co-host, I would recommend checking out this interview I did with this developer named Unlimited Trees. They made a platformer. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's pronounced Unitress Dreams. And what I love about this is that it's a pixel art, side-scrolling, 16-bit platformer, kind of akin to a Sonic the Hedgehog, kind of very Genesis feeling, but it reminds me that like you really have no obligation to make your game appeal to anyone else besides yourself. Yeah. And I'm not saying that as like a backhanded whatever. I love this game. I played the game. But like the developer clearly, and they said it multiple times in the interview, like they are making this only for their own enjoyment. Like it doesn't matter if 100 other people, 1,000 other people, resonate with every artistic choice, every dialogue choice, every choice of the physics. Like I think there's something so much more beautiful, and especially because platformers is the genre that has been like well trodden like on Steam and things like that, and is kind of like, I mean, the side-scrolling platformer is kind of like the epitome of the original sort of indie game success. You know what I mean?
Right. It's your Braid and Meat Boy and
Cave Story, etc., etc. So the idea of people making platformers that like they don't care if it's going to be the next Mario, it's just the aesthetic they want, the music they want, the characters they want, and like obviously, we all know 9 times out of 10 when like an artist allows themselves to do that, it makes an end product that is so much more resonant, I think, than trying to make the platformer that everyone who plays Mario is gonna like.
Yeah, I'm looking. I went to find Unlimited Trees to go look at it, and it has a what a look. I like, so that is like, I think what I like very much also what I am also striving for. It's things that feel like nobody else could have made these games. Like this is like very specifically a game that person had to make. Right.
And I think when you try to tell people about these sort of very, super indie games or alternative or whatever you want to call them, like people might assume that they're all going to be like Crumbs, or they're all going to be a Twine game, or they're all going to be a certain emotional flavor. But like to me, this is just as alternative as anything else. This is like a person who loves platformers, who plays certain platformers and thinks like, that's not how I would do it, here's how I would do it, and like just is having fun with it and is putting them out for free, and like clearly the work is building up over time and the skills are building up over time, that like people who also resonate with that will eventually find it and be like, it's like you plucked this right out of my brain. I never would have known to look for something like this.
To shout out a recent Indiepocalypse contributor, like Sylvie is very much like, those are not Sylvie's games are not the Crumb style games, but they're also, they're generally like, they look more like video games, but they're still like so far from they look like platformers, and I mean it with a
Right.
compliment that they're not what you're thinking you're getting in. They're explorations of mechanics and like design ideas, and they're like they're very distinct in that way. That is not like what you said, where you think, oh well, they're distinct because it's a person telling a story through a story, and then maybe I walk left to right and or click on hyperlinks. But it's like, no, a
Right.
person is telling their perspective through what you call it, like how they approach mechanical design.
Yeah, I mean, to use like a specific example, not to speak for Unlimited Trees, but like when
Yeah.
I talked to them, like they said, like I've seen them say on co-host, like, oh, they their game bears like a similarity to Sonic the Hedgehog, but they're like, I don't even like, they have their critiques about those old Sonic the Hedgehog games, and like they have changed the physics and the mechanics of their side scroller to be what they think is funnier, more fun and funnier, which is like a
Yes.
very personal expression of like this mechanic would be funnier if you could every time you jump you could attack downward to double jump, or like you could flip and sort of like soar across the level by like exploiting this physics glitch and things like that. Like that is just as personal as any line of dialogue could be, or just as personal as any like emotional cutscene could be. And, I'm not saying that's more valid. I'm saying it's
Right.
equally valid for like
Yes. Yeah.
a visual novel or a Twine game or anything like that. Like people want to express themselves, and one way they want to express themselves is like, how do the jump physics work? How does the
Right.
health work? How does the character function? Things like that.
Right. Right. Art game tends to get very pigeonholed into this idea of it's just a quiet story game that I don't play. You know.
Right. Something contemplative, something sad. And just to reiterate again, I love contemplative. I love sad. But
Yeah.
like if people aren't in the mood for that, there are games that are just as experimental that are like clearly we don't even have the terminology because you and I are tripping over how to even describe,
Yeah. Well,
how you would pitch games like this.
how many games? How many video games are there being made or have been made that are inspired by Yume Nikki? You know,
Right, exactly.
there
And
and
thankfully we don't call them Yumi Nikki likes.
what a curse! Because I think the people who make those Yume Nikki likes would vomit at the idea of it. They are not
Right, right.
they're not like they don't have like terminal uh marketer brain typically that leads you to call everything like I like search action. I think we should call Metroidvania search action games.
Yeah, I like, or I've heard someone say action exploration. I
Yeah,
think in my mind, action exploration or search action like are completely sufficient at describing what the
yeah,
mechanic is.
yeah, and that
Is
is
it?
like
I mean, is it not exploring and also some action?
yeah,
I
that
mean,
is it's the term. I believe that's the Japanese term is search action
right.
because also I mean most Metroidvanias they're not even like they're just Symphony of the Night like the Metroid DNA need not even be present.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a very
They're not similar to the Castlevanias that came before Symphony
right.
of the Night.
Right. Then and in a lot of ways they're not even similar to what is charming about Symphony of the Night. but but anyway, yeah, the games are like the touch of like I was to bring it back to slightly to movie mode I'm in because
Sure.
I'm trying to watch a movie a night to put in like a different perspective. I was like I thought I got one good example, but I was like, how do I find a second one that is uh I'm trying to think of it. Anyways, I'll just go with my original, which is to say that Jackie Chan and John Cassavetes are both very they travel in very different styles of film, but they're
Hmm.
also like very distinct films that are like from them in the same ways that like it is from, even though one is like more deliberate character pieces and one is intense action. They are very clearly like from their author's like style and voice. in the same way that like not all games are required to like to have that authorial voice need to be like one genre, or like you can take action seriously.
Yeah, and I feel like film as an art form is old enough that like people innately do seem to understand this. Like I think even people who enjoy mostly mainstream quote unquote films
Yeah.
understand the other combinations of flavors that exist in film and know either that's for them or it's not for them. And they would know how to find it if they wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're still like catching up for people to even know that these games are even available, like
Right.
in existence. Like it just doesn't have the sort of inherent knowledge that I think people have about film and about novels, to
Yeah.
know that they come in all these different genres.
Yeah, they I think they're only just escaping also like the I I think it's easy to underestimate how much there is a cultural understanding of like video games are for children if you're in video
Right.
games. I think that sentiment is still broader than the gamers think.
And it was a commercial product from day one, which is
Right.
not not the same for other forms of art,
Right. Right.
Other forms of art were invented before the sort of commercialization of them really took off.
Yeah, you can still you can watch movies from like the 20s that have like
Right.
uh, a clear artistic bend to them that are like still very purposeful, and they've been around longer, so like yeah. And it's also
It's an uphill it's an uphill battle for us
right,
with
right.
this
It's
this
uphill battle
baby
for
this baby art form.
yeah, and they also came out in like as the critic is starting to wane as a cultural force too. So
Yep.
it's harder for like a game critic to sandwich, have meaningfully guide the culture in between 30 listicles about anime on their video game website.
Yeah. And even in like, we could say maybe that the better approach would have been the video game magazines, but unfortunately a lot of the magazines were also kind of an arm of PR.
Right. Right. It's like uh, it's tricky because there are people doing video game criticism, but there's no money in it, and there's increasingly feels like there's little. I mean, the audience will be there. I think the audience will be. My hope is that the audience is like increasingly there for non commercial stuff. I was talking to someone yesterday, and he was saying something about he was talking about like how he feels like people are turning back to taking genre not the genre fiction seriously, genre films and going back to accepting the conventions of genre instead of being overly ironic or insincere about them, like sincerity is coming back.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because people are tired of Captain America pointing at Tetris. They're just like, I want a movie that makes me feel something.
Right.
And so I think that'll that's art. Art goes in waves. There are movements, and then there are counter movements, then there are counter movements, and etc. And I think
yeah, and a lot of it I think is people, sadly, I think from every art form now realizing that like they're going to have to be in control of searching that out themselves. That you cannot rely that like this stuff is going to come across your eye line during your daily life. You can't rely that the posters hung up in the movie theater are going to be for these sort of like other movies other than Marvel, Disney, etc. Like I don't know. I feel like there's more labor expectation on the audience to like do the labor themselves of finding the things that they want,
right.
which is like it's just kind of it's not even like a good or bad thing. It's just like a bummer. Like
yeah, because
how much work you have to put into finding something that you like. It's just like it's too exhausting.
Right, because we don't go to we don't have like the limited like newspaper sources anymore where we would see like the hand-picked reviews. We're online where we're inundated by ads constantly.
Yeah.
And how often is a review of an art game gonna slip through, 80 million Fortnite, Devolver, uh, Activision ads,
Yeah, I mean, like I know like the phrase like a tastemaker kind of has like a negative connotation, but also
Let's bring
like
it back as a positive connotation. I think
yeah, like maybe we need people who are willing to do the labor of checking out all this stuff that isn't a Twitch channel, like something that is more communicated in a different way.
if only there was someone like on a social media site writing a regular blog about independent video games.
If only.
You're onto something, Kyle, but we're not
If
quite
only.
there.
Are they in the room right now?
They might be. I might be
Are
speaking
they are
to
they
them.
here? Are they in the call?
Yeah, they're. That is, yes. It happens, and the tricky thing is you just gotta kind of persevere and not be like, well, what if nobody pays attention to it? And it's like, well, it still needs to exist.
Yeah, my attitude is like, I think co-host is in a way the perfect platform for this because the psychology of co-host is to not care about
Yeah,
the numbers. So it's like, I check my notifications pretty frequently, and I know which posts are getting likes and which aren't. And like, as long as I post like an interview with someone and it gets like 5 likes or 10 or 15 or 2, like if anyone enjoyed it or there's one comment, someone saying like, "Hey, I checked out this game," or like, "Hey, this was a good interview," or like, "Hey, I found this person," or one person follows them a co-host, like I think that's a victory. Like,
yeah,
isn't that the goal? I mean, like playing Indiepocalypse stuff, and like I'm like, is the goal not for at least one other person to play this and say that like it connected with them? Like I feel like you have to start there and then see where it goes from there.
right. I mean, even with Indiepocalypse, my own personal goals, I don't expect everyone to like really resonate with every game in an issue, but I expect like someone will be like, I hope in each issue someone's like, oh, this is the game that was made for me that I didn't know existed before.
Right.
But it's like it like maybe it's exactly in my wheelhouse. Maybe it opens them up to like a different perspective of design. It broadens their horizons or reinforces what they're looking for, but with a new author and all those sorts of things. It's why I started doing the top 10 lists, or the unnumerated lists of 10 games.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I've been playing Indiepocalypse games and taking some notes on a Google Doc just in case
Right.
it's my turn in the ring.
Yeah, that is, and I mean that is me. I make no secret that everything I do is stolen from somebody else, and that's what Criterion does every month. They have they have like their top 10 list from like some filmmaker,
Right.
because they have what, like 1,000 movies.
And I
So
think that's really in every art form. I think that's really from an audience perspective of browsing. I think that's
yeah,
all anyone is looking for is for like an endorsement from at least one person. Like
right,
nobody, I think people are reluctant to buy a Steam game that has no reviews. Like people just want like, can someone just give me the thumbs up on this? Not to like just because they give it a thumbs up, I'm going to like it, but just like you want that sort of like human endorsement of like this connected with someone. Maybe it'll connect with me too.
yeah. I mean, the reason I cracked open my Cassavetes box set as my next thing to watch is because I saw A Woman Under the Influence on like 3 or 4 lists, like right after one after another, and I was like, I guess I ought to actually watch this movie finally.
Yeah, it's the gentle shove that I think we all need to try something that we have always been meaning to do.
Right.
Which is like it's the guilty spot that I find myself in, which is like I want to play more of these alternative games, but I never like carve out the time on purpose to play
Right.
them. So then when I'm stuck between like this AAA game and this AA game and this big indie game and whatever, and it's like, I'm gonna have to like force myself to carve out the time to play these games that I would like if I just play them.
Right. And it's harder, I think, because it's also very self-isolating. Nobody. It's easier to play something like, even within the indie space, to play like Cult of the Lamb, because a lot of people are talking about Cult of the Lamb. So you get that, like, you can either actually talk about it, or get that secondhand feeling of like people are talking about it with me.
Yes, exactly. Which I think like a lot of people like we underrate how powerful that feeling is.
Yeah. Right, of like feeling included, or or you can be like a weird freak like me, where you love to be unrelatable.
You love to live in the niches and the
Right,
fringes.
right. But that's also it's very like isolating, like almost intentionally so.
And even in that case, it's I just think when there's one other person there in the fringe with you to talk about it with, I think it's just so much more. It can be so much more fulfilling to have at least one or two people to talk about something with.
Yeah. When I can talk to someone about conservation, I love it. It's but how many other people out there have played this game, like this visually intense, like what is it, like 5 or 10 minute long game from like a Brazilian indie developer? It's only available on itch. It's like nobody, or like I say nobody, but like people are playing it, but also is like it's I think it's why this kind of thing has to exist, because and why indie games of co-hosts, it has to exist because there are you can't wait for things to become popular in order to try and like them,
Right.
because they may never become popular. And that's how it's how you build out like the cult canon. It's why you can buy the shags still, because somebody out there cares. Some passionate weirdo
Right.
out there. It's like, yeah, this musically uninclined trio. What if we just preserve them forever?
Right. And I'm sure you're just like me, where it's like I'm sure neither of us are under any illusion that like the things that we run are going to like change the internet forever,
No.
or make some sort of impact that is like statistically significant to anyone's bottom line, or but like we could like it could happen, so why isn't it worth trying?
Yeah.
If it helps one person's life, then it's like it was worth making the co-host page. It took 2 seconds to make the co-host page.
Right.
And then took dedicated labor of setting up pages every day. But other than that,
sure, but like, you know,
but I'm sure it's the same for you. Like I enjoy doing it, so like
yeah, I don't know how to not do it.
Yeah, if we enjoy doing it, then like, and anyone who enjoys giving something a shout out, I think should give things a shout out. Is that not what social media exists for in like a positive sense? Is like you found a cool thing and you want to show the cool thing to 10 other people.
I don't know. When I was in my For You tab on Twitter the other day, I saw
There was a very different purpose to social media in there.
I saw a post out for like a new Ninja Turtles movie, was like that was something effective like I have zero interest in watching this movie, but hey, it looks cool. And that is very much like I want to be the person who shares the thing that people want to share.
Right.
Which is like that truly cursed part of social media where your own social media feed itself is content.
Yeah, I've been trying to like. I feel like we're none of us are immune to that, and I've been having to do some long looks in the mirror about like what I'm putting out into the world by like pressing tweet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I simply press it much less. It turns out you don't actually need to tell anyone about any of the things you enjoy.
And another thing that attracts me about co-hosts is that it just inherently feels slower.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they purposely don't have like infinite scrolling, I think, for that very purpose. Like
Right.
the website is meant to feel like the slow lane on the highway, like on purpose. And I think like I can't say what the world needs, but I think that's what my brain needs.
Right.
More than anything. Like,
and there's something to a site that like lends itself to longer posts, and sometimes I go on, I'm like, I just don't feel like reading this. It's too long.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just not reading it.
Right. You don't need to. We survive very long without the internet. We'll survive. You can survive even longer still, without it. It's a weird thing of like. Anyway, speaking of things that have been around for a long time, this show has been going on for a while. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
the standby question of Indiepocalypse, the second standby question that the people come here for, and this question is from Mochi and Kyle. I need to know: do you have a favorite Toho character?
Oh my god. So my experience with Toho is weirdly enough, I've dabbled in some of the main games,
Yeah.
but there's someone made like a fighting game like a decade ago,
Yeah.
and like that was my Toho was the fighting game. So I gotta pull up what these characters' names are quick. I know what one is Patchouli Knowledge, and I used her a lot in the fighting
Oh.
game.
Yes,
So that's gonna
that's like the little sickly librarian witch devil.
yes, and this was a fighting game that was very like magic based.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people at the time called it like a Dojin fighter, to like describe the subgenre. So like you're like firing off like thousands of bullets into the air. It's like very different from like Street Fighter. I used to play as Patchouli, and there was like a maid with knives.
Oh yes, I don't know. Is that not Knife Maid Toho? I think it begins with an S.
Is it Sakuya?
Yes, Sakuya. Yes.
Those were my mains. So that's how I'm gonna answer that question.
Okay, I think they are both within the Scarlet Devil Mansion, which is for my limited Toho, my preferred aesthetic or collection of characters.
Do they come? Do they come in different sets?
I don't. I think that's a location that a lot of people hang out in. There's like vampires and witches or something over there. That's where the people have like the weird gem wings, I think.
All right. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna agree with you. I think this is my favorite Toho vibe.
Okay.
Crystal wings, vampires, knives.
Time-stopping knife maid. I play it. She also stars in Team Ladybug's Castlevania Symphony of the Night adjacent search action game. They made a Toho one that is very. They also made a Record of the Lodoss War game that is just aesthetically and like mechanically Symphony of the Night, but more level based.
Oh, I played a little bit of that one.
Oh, So you've seen my favorite part in video games in like recent video gaming where the chapters start by the die rolling down, and I like.
Yeah.
I fell in love with that. Like this is like a perfect part of. This is art. This is a perfect piece of design. Oh my god, it's so well done. It's such a simple thing, but
yeah.
Anyway, my only experience with Record of Lodoss War otherwise is I think there was like a Flash game on Cartoon Network for it, and it was long and confusing. I didn't want to play it.
There was a Flash game for Record of Lodoss War on Cartoon Network?
I think so. Because I think Record of Lodoss War is part of Toonami, like the early.
Oh, that's fascinating. I had no idea.
Right. It was the boring show with this. It was a slow, boring show with the soldiers or whatever that I didn't watch. But like,
look, I got one. I was gonna watch it recently. I got one episode in, and I'm still on episode 1. So I really need to dedicate myself to push onward.
Yeah, I like the aesthetic. Anime wise, I think I prefer that aesthetic towards a more modern. If there is like a house style, a prevailing aesthetic. Because of course, even within every era, there are like distinct aesthetics. But
my mistake was right before watching Record of Lodoss War. I watched The Slayers. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yes, I think I saw part of Slayers at a friend's house because their older sister was watching it.
So I loved it. I'd never seen it as a kid, and I just like binged the whole thing like a year ago, and I loved it. And I look it up. People are like, "Oh, what people used to always say on forums was that Record of Lodoss War was what they thought their D&D campaign was like, and Slayers was what their D&D campaign was actually like." So I feel like I watched them in the wrong order.
Yes. Well, wait. Was Slayers also based off a D&D campaign?
No, but it's
Okay,
pulling from those tropes.
you're right,
It's
right.
almost like it's like a parody.
Yes, yes. Well, because Lodos, I'm sure you know, is literally based off a D&D campaign.
Yes, which is I think is very cool idea.
Yeah, that even that idea of I bought a book of like someone's transcribed D&D campaign is
Yeah,
very.
we should get more of that. Enough of this like actual play Twitch stream stuff. I'm ready for the novelizations.
Yes, yes. That's a whole other weird thing that's taken off that I was never expecting. But anyway, uh, I had a thought, but then it left me. It was something about in Slayers. Is there a part where there's like a lake and someone either dies or turns to stone, and maybe there's a raised plateau near the lake?
That sounds familiar. So
Okay,
yes, I think that
that's a
gonna
vague
happen.
memory I have of what I think is Slayers. The other weird thing about Slayers is like it is very weird that there's a character in Dota 2 that's still called Lena.
Yeah. I was looking through all the like trivia on the Wikipedia page, and it's like there's a Dota character that was directly inspired by the protagonist, and I'm like, what? And it's like they're still named that, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it is super weird because it is. Do they still? Okay, they don't. They don't. Do not. They don't go so far as to call her Lena inverse, but it is. It's very weird. It is just like it's. It feels like the last one of the last lineages of like people just making a bunch of anime games in StarCraft and Warcraft. Is like the person who made Dota liked Slayers a lot and put his favorite anime character in there. I imagine.
And her attack is still called Dragon Slave, which is the name of the attack from the show.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think all the names are is Laguna Blade one of them too. I think it's just like
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's basically just like an anime wars character, but within Dota. I
That's
prefer.
amazing. I hope they never change it now.
Yeah, as a child, as a child and teen, I preferred anime wars because the people who played Dota were too serious.
How did that work out for you in the long run?
Uh, I think I'm fine.
Well,
Anime
I was
wars.
gonna say it feels like Dota won the war in the end.
Well, no, League of Legends won the war.
I guess that's true.
I'm sure people play Dota, but let's be real. I sometimes feel like there was this culture where like people in games press just liked Dota more, so they thought it was bigger, but it never was.
Right. I felt like the exact same thing happened with Players Unknown Battlegrounds. I felt like
Yeah,
every journalist I knew loved that and was like unaware that Fortnite had already surpassed the sort of pop culture moment of PUBG.
right, right. And it's like it's this very weird thing. Like no, like uh, I think it also has to do with Valve's like the way they show off their prize pool, which also feels very esports bullshit. When like the World Series doesn't be like the MLB's prize pool. It's like that's not sports. That's
Yeah, it
esports.
feels more it feels more like a poker tournament would
Right,
advertise themselves that way.
right. Which is like that's how you
It
can.
might be that might be indicative of something deeper about Valve.
Yeah, yeah. I think you can tell if something is still a fake esport if they brag about their prize pools, except for fighting games, which are the true esport. They just don't have money. They just don't have
But they have to do that.
right. But it's also truly the purest form of electronics. Anyway, I asked my Toho question. That's how I'm supposed to end the show. That's how I'm getting. That's how I'm getting close to the end.
Have you ever stumped someone with that? I need to know if I did a good
Oh
job on that
no!
one.
Often people don't even know what Toho is.
Oh, so I nailed it.
Yeah, yeah. You were able to pull up a character name.
I had Petroli knowledge in my holster.
Yes, you were ready. Most people, actually, one person did say like Ultraman because uh, they were thinking Toho, like Toho. As in,
I think they deserve bonus points for that. I think that's a totally valid
yeah, it
answer.
is. It is. I'm like, yeah, actually, that is a Toho. I don't know if Ultraman's a Toho character or if they said Ultraman, but yes, that is also the rubber suit style. Because I think you're probably supposed to say it differently, like to emphasize
Oh
that they
yeah, yeah.
are used in there. But I'm an American.
Yeah, I haven't quite cracked that yet. I know I'm doing it wrong, but I don't know how to do it right quite yet.
Right. And there's, but yeah, most people I think get what we're going with the, you know, the shrine maidens and the bullet
Right.
hells,
Yes.
which is itself, like a genre of expression, you know, that
Yeah,
is
expressing yourself through bullet patterns.
right. Like Toho is very distinct through its music and its mechanics, but also like it's not the dialogue in Toho games is not serious and gripping and emotionally wrought.
But we don't have time to get into this, but people have certainly spun it into their own interpretation that has
Yes.
been emotionally.
That's I mean that's there is more time than I ever have on the show to talk about how fascinating Toho is, like conceptually.
You got to put the Toho question halfway through the show, I think.
Yeah. So then we can talk about. Isn't it really cool that someone just is like, "Hey, uh, do whatever you can make games with my characters for money and all this stuff."
It's
He also,
I'm waiting for someone else to do it. I'm waiting for someone else to be brave like that.
we live in a world of cowards, God.
You know what? I'll volunteer. I'll make a game and then I'll let everyone do it.
Right. I will make a game with a lot of memorable characters that people are drawn to, and then I'll let them make fan
And then
games.
I'll let them go. If you love something, you have to let it go and let the
Yeah.
world have it.
But it's also Zune, if that's how you pronounce it. He always seems like he's having a good time. Whenever all the pictures I've seen with him are like he's got a huge like one of those huge mugs of beer, and he's smiling.
That's all I care about. I hope he's having a good time. He deserves it.
Yeah, it seems like, hey, I like these bullet hells. Yeah, all these pictures. He's got like a beer in a lot of these pictures. So
I'm happy for him.
yeah, just like, hey, you know, out there living your best life, making you're like, I want to put a lot of bullets, and I want to drink beer.
I'll interview him. If he gets a co-host, I'll interview him.
Yeah, does he have a
You think he's on?
co-host?
You think
Probably not.
he's interested in co-host?
I don't know. I don't know what his. Also, I don't know what like his proficiency in English is. Could be fully.
It could be 0. It could be 100. We're not quite sure.
Right. Could be anywhere in between. But anyway, that's the show, I would think.
Thanks so much for having me. Was this more pessimistic than the conversations usually are?
No. Was it pessimistic?
it
I don't think it was. No,
was a lot of optimism about what we do. And
right. Well,
everything else is the uphill battle is looking very dark.
Right. I think it's because we found it's a solo show with two people who are kind of doing similar things, and recognizing that, like, will it ever make a difference?
I appreciate you having me on to have this venting session between the two of us.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's if I gave someone $60 they didn't have previously, I think that makes a difference. You know.
But absolutely.
I think it makes a difference to be published for the first time. I think it makes a difference to be interviewed for the first time.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it can. I think game development and just like art creation in general can be extremely self-isolated, or can be extremely isolating if you like don't, especially if you don't have like a community. And game development lends itself less to being in physical spaces with other people. And
Right.
like,
Yeah. It's kind of lonely by nature.
right. And so if you don't find the right community, and also like communities seem annoying, or like community forming is so like this like Discord driven. You never know if somebody wants you. A lot of people want you to be part of their community, you know,
Right.
rather than a mutual collection of people. but
I guess as long as we all find each other somehow in the end.
right.
And we don't get on each other's nerves too much.
No, I'm good at not getting on people's nerves. I think, generally speaking, or even if I am, I don't. I cannot be nerves cannot be gotten on me, or something. I have no patience. I have no energy to be mad at people. I got things.
That's a good outlook. That's a good outlook.
I'm in my 30s and I have a job. I have other things to do than be mad at people, than be mad at people on Twitter.
I think that's a good way to think of it.
That's a team's game. But anyway, yeah, because I think there's a lot of what is it? There's genuine concerns that people take up, but then there's also a lot of ingenuine concerns that people take up, and the latter is like the real bane of the internet.
Yeah, and honestly, not that I'm not paid to advertise co-hosts, but I think if you want to help curate some of that, I think some of these other platforms
Yes.
are a good way of sort of like cutting through the noise, and then like people you follow will write like a long form piece about something that matters, and you can read that.
Right.
They're not doing it. They're not doing it for the retweets.
Right. Because the latter, the insignificant drama, is also like 99% people quote tweet dunking on someone with 80 followers.
Right. Yeah.
And arguments between people who will never know each other.
Dunking on like a 14-year-old.
Yes, precisely. It's not actually
a 14-year-old who admittedly said like the worst thing on the planet, but also is like a child.
Right. It's very rarely people who know each other and have actual grievances with each other. It is generally people who will often dunk on each other and then forget about it. But
yeah, it's rough to watch it all happen constantly.
10,000 other people also join in on the dunking after the first person is long forgotten.
Right.
But anyway, I've given you the bummer you demanded.
There we go. Yeah, we found it. We found the pessimism that I accused us of.
I snuck in that pessimism last minute. Really, I'm not that pessimistic about it. It's just I don't have. I was like, oh, how can I weasel in a little bit of it last minute, and then I as you can tell, found it hard to even commit to it. But
well, I'll end on a happy note and say for all your listeners, they should head to co-hosts. You don't even have to have an account to look at posts. You should go to Indie Games of Co-hosts. You can read interviews. You can see cool new games. You should check out Indiepocalypse if you haven't checked out Indiepocalypse, and just have a good time.
Perfect. That is the you did the thing I need you to do, which was to promote your stuff. You didn't even.
I beat you to the punch.
Well, I'll agree with that. And the beauty of Indie Games of Co-hosts is there's nothing else named that. So, the URL is probably something like indiegamesofcohost.com.
Yeah, I nabbed it as fast as I can nab it.
Yeah, I thought of like, should I get Indiepocalypse? But like, I don't care.
Yep. So to do the proper plug, it is cohost.org/indiegamesofcohost.
Yes.
That's it.
And I accidentally closed my window where I copied that link because I have all those links there. I'm up there as not Indiepocalypse because the brand will never take over. The brand will never take over the person. Right. I'm a person, not a brand. I'm a person, not a logo, not a collection of catchphrases. And more importantly, these are collections of games, not a, you're not buying Indiepocalypse, you're buying Indiepocalypse, which is also 10 different games. In order for you to buy Indiepocalypse, which is 10 different games, you can head over to indiepocalypse.com or indiepocalypse.com/Patreon, or if you want to join it, you can go to indiepocalypse.com/submit. And it's very easy to do. and then you can go to indiepocalypse.com/starter or slash what's the word I'm looking for? I think I called it 10 picks. If you're like, oh, I don't know where to start, or I bought this first issue, and now I don't know where to go from here, but it seems very cool. I am increasingly finding ways to help people navigate this impressive back catalog. If you go to cohost.com, what am I on Cohost? Am I like pizzapranks.cohost.com?
cohost.org/pizzapranks.
That's me. Yes, you can see Will Wright running away. If you see Will Wright running away from Bowser, you know you found the right spot. That's the true best part of Co-host, is that it lets me have GIFs.
Yeah.
As my header. You can go there, and my most recent post is oh, I should really shrink this. I gotta add a read more to this thing. It's too big.
This is new co-host etiquette. Put the read more. You never want to spam someone's timeline. That's my. I'm not trying to take up space on anyone's monitor.
Yes. No, that was my intro post. I think back when I was assuming it would do it automatically.
Right.
But if you go to that co-host site, and eventually on my website, you will see I made my first Indiepocalypse double features is something I'm trying to do now. Which it features 10 Mississippi and Maps of a Known World, and it's like games that you play together. You pair them. They share conceptual ideas, and these are both 10 Mississippi is stop motion. Uses stop motion photography. Maps of the Known World uses full motion video, like home movies, and they are both like this exploration of like different varying degrees of personal intimacy and using like real life footage to explore and not as and like what that means in like games. If you just think of like real life footage as not merely like a graphical treatment, but like as an integral part of the games themselves. And that is me writing about games in Indiepocalypse. And I want to keep trying to do that, because I think it's both I should write about them, but also I should I think it's I need to find new ways to sell 400 games.
I'm looking at it right now. I love this double feature.
Yeah, it's
great.
Also, I mean, that's 90% stolen from Criterion, and because the other 10% is, I mean, double features are things that exist.
Yeah.
But they have the same problem I have, where they have a massive library of important artistic works, and how do you sell them month after month when you are equally when you value all of the pieces of the library equally, you know?
The answer is steal a little bit from Criterion.
I'll steal a lot of it. Like they're good. They're big. They're a nice big example of art curation. So they have a lot of editorial stuff and they do a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to borrow those ideas.
I mean, a lot of people aren't doing it in games, so we gotta find inspiration elsewhere.
Right, yes. Or they're doing it and they're hard to find, and they're smaller than me. And
yeah, I guess I should. They are doing it. It's just hard to find.
Right. There are like your No Escape and your Criticals and Deep Hells, Indie Game Indie Hell Zone. There Uppercut has been like ongoing. Is also on top of that is a good place to like get people jobs within the industry for as long as those last.
Right.
It's like that is the other thing of like, how do you break into like get who publishes you for the first time? There are people who are doing that kind of work too, because you also need to get published to write about things to get to those platforms. But
right. Well, you and I are just putting one more brick in that foundation that
Yes.
those groups have started.
Right. It's all. Someone has always come before you. No one's ever. That's why I always, whenever I say something that a qualitative statement of Indiepocalypse, I always make sure to put monthly on it because, technically speaking, nothing else has been monthly. Is it the most profitable anthology? Or certainly not. Certainly not the most popular. But
it is monthly.
But if it's
That's
monthly,
what you got going for you. It's monthly.
it is the most popular if you're talking about monthly ones. Because
I like that.
It's still the only one. But anyway, I'm shutting the show down. This is enough of this.
All right.
I don't mean that.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is enough of this bullshit. More like this is enough of. I'll just keep going and talking.
Well, we can collectively shut it down.
Yeah. So, Kyle, thank you for being here and holding down the fort solo sesh for almost 2 hours.
Of course, this was fun. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna leave with the regular theme song. Goodbye.